King Charles III and William, Prince of Wales. No relationship is more vital or more complex than that of a king and his heir.
It's one of the strongest
take a royal child away on an overseas tour.
But old family traditions died. King Charles III and William, Prince of Wales. No relationship is more vital or more complex than that of a king and his heir.
It's one of the strongest father-son relationships that the monarchy's ever had.
An heir shaped by a doting mother who transformed the royal family.
This made people feel that she was sort of one of us.
An unbreakable bond between father and son has been forged through triumph and tragedy.
Suddenly you had the death of Diana, and it was a total shock for the family, the country, the world.
It could so easily have gone so disastrously wrong for the monarchy.
With strength and compassion, Charles shows William how to find a way forward. King Charles III and William, Prince of Wales. No relationship is more vital or more complex than that of a king and his heir.
It's one of the strongest father-son relationships that the monarchy's ever had.
An heir shaped by a doting mother who transformed the royal family.
This made people feel that she was sort of one of us.
An unbreakable bond between father and son has been forged through triumph and tragedy.
Suddenly you had the death of Diana, and it was a total shock for the family, the country, the world.
It could so easily have gone so disastrously wrong for the monarchy.
With strength and compassion, Charles shows William how King Charles III and William, Prince of Wales. No relationship is more vital or more complex than that of a king and his heir.
It's one of the strongest father-son relationships that the monarchy's ever had.
An heir shaped by a doting mother who transformed the royal family.
This made people feel that she was sort of one of us.
An unbreakable bond between father and son has been forged through triumph and tragedy.
Suddenly you had the death of Diana, and it was a total shock for the family, the country, the world.
It could so easily have gone so disastrously wrong for the monarchy.
With strength and compassion, Charles shows William how to find a way forward.
Charles can be very proud of the fact that he has helped William grow into a statesman.
But then a brother's betrayal and the shadow of illness over the king and the princess plunged the monarchy into the biggest crisis in a generation.
William said that it was the worst year of his life.
How will king and heir weather the storm together? King Charles has moulded Prince William as both son and heir. But to understand their unshakable bond, we must go back to the reign of Britain's most dearly loved national treasure, Queen Elizabeth II. After the sudden death of her father, Elizabeth came to the throne in a post-war period where the country desperately needed stability.
One of the most important roles of a monarch is to ensure that the dynasty is safeguarded, and Queen Elizabeth absolutely did that. Really what you're thinking about is destiny, about succession, about securing the future lineage.
Elizabeth and Prince Philip secured the Windsor dynasty even before she became queen. With the birth of an heir in 1948, Prince Charles. But Charles was just 3 years old when his family life was suddenly turned upside down.
Charles had this upbringing where his mum became queen at this tender age of 25, and he was tiny, and suddenly mum was taken away by the world and by her job.
The new Queen Elizabeth immediately had duties to perform. She and Prince Philip embarked on a 6-month tour of the Commonwealth, leaving Charles at home to be raised by grandparents and nannies. Whenever he was reunited with his mother, Elizabeth deemed public displays of affection to be very unroyal behaviour.
So he was used to being greeted by his mother with a handshake. In public, there was very much a formality between the royal family with the Windsors.
I think we never expected Prince Charles to be a sort of touchy-feely person because, he was brought up in a very traditional 50s aristocratic way.
Charles was a sensitive and artistic child, while his father, Prince Philip, was a strict disciplinarian. His motto of duty first demanded that his oldest son followed orders and never answered back.
The relationship between the then Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, and Charles was a difficult one. He's actually a really sentimental chap. He feels things really deeply. He'll cry at the drop of a hat or the sound of a note. Music will move him to tears 9 times out of 10.
Philip thought the future king needed toughening up by sending him off to board at Philip's old school, Gordonston.
He was packed off to a fairly bleak Scottish boarding school that he didn't like, didn't want to be there. And I think, for much of his youth, he sort of felt unhappy.
In the Netflix drama The Crown, Gordonston is depicted as a stereotypical boarding school, with tough outdoor activities, strict discipline, and bullying.
I thought I would come up here and see how you're settling in. Have you made friends?
One, I think. Although it's quite hard to understand what he says sometimes.
Charles has spoken about Gordonston. I don't think he had a very nice time there. It wasn't really for him, the sailing and the hiking in that respect, and all weathers and cold showers. This was someone who was quite thoughtful, quite artistic, and it was an environment in which he really flourished.
Charles's early years taught him to keep his emotions to himself and copy royal tradition.
Charles used to say, when asked how did he learn about how to do his royal role, he said, I learnt like a monkey learns from watching its parents.
Charles's upbringing was all about developing the right stuff in a future king. By the time he was a young man, arguably his most important duty lay just around the corner. Find a bride and secure the dynasty. In 1980, Lady Diana Spencer arrives.
When Diana Spencer was introduced, she was a complete breath of fresh air in this royal family, which at this point in the 80s, a little bit boring, a little bit staid.
She was so beautiful and so shy. She's right at the beginning, she had that characteristic of sort of looking up through her hair. It was beguiling, and I think the nation fell in love with her very, very early on.
She was somebody who had a personal touch which hadn't been seen in the House of Windsor publicly before.
When Charles and Diana announced their engagement in a TV interview, Charles's awkward performance did no favours for the royal reputation for coldness in affairs of the heart.
The Charles and Diana engagement interview, I think, is very difficult watch even now. Of course, it's gone down in history for the fact that Charles was, they were both asked, of course, you're in love. And he said, I suppose so, well, whatever love is.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
I mean, Diana did look at him and think, well, I know what she thought, because I asked her about it. And she said, I just didn't know what he meant. I was appalled. Whereas she just said, well, of course we are. It's very, very uncomfortable viewing. On one of her earliest engagements in Wales, when I know that she was terrified, she told me, to get out of the car. She said, what was I meant to do? I was brought up not to speak to strangers, and all of a sudden I had to go and just go up to total strangers and make conversation. And she found it really hard, but what she did was head straight for the children quite often. And she would kneel down and be at their height in a way that we hadn't seen members of the royal family do really before. So from the off, she was different.
The nation is ecstatic when Charles and Diana marry in 1981.
You had this fairy tale wedding of Diana and Charles with the dress and the church and millions of people watching it around the world.
A year later, in June 1982, Charles and Diana do their duty and produce another king to come after him, William.
And now here was the brand new heir to the throne.
When William was just 9 months old, the Prince and Princess of Wales were called to embark on their own royal tour to Australia. But Diana refused to let history repeat itself. Her son would never be left behind like Charles was.
When the Prince and Princess of Wales took William to Australia, I mean, that was huge.
Charles and Diana were determined to be hands-on parents. I mean, they were the first royals to take a royal child away on an overseas tour.
But old family traditions die hard. Although Charles remained a sensitive soul, his public behaviour as a parent remained stuck in the rigid mould of Prince Philip's.
He wasn't given to public displays of emotion, hugs and cuddles and all the rest of it in public.
By the time Prince Harry was born, Diana had rewritten royal convention as the model of a modern loving mother.
Diana just threw all that away and said, I don't really care what's gone on before. I'm going to hug and kiss my boys and ruffle their hair and be more natural with them, because that obviously came naturally to her. But it didn't so much with Charles.
I mean, she told me, I'm determined, and I shower my boys with hugs.
For the princes, their parents' ideas of fun looked completely different.
William and Harry both benefited from two quite different types of parenting. Charles loved the countryside. Those were the sort of holidays that they did with their dad. But she was more of a pavement person. She would take them out to Kensington High Street, she'd put on a disguise so that she wasn't recognised, and take them down to Tower Records. Her at Thorpe Park, coming down the water slide with the boys. I mean, you could not imagine Charles doing such a thing. So they really did have the best of both worlds.
Coming up, cracks in Charles and Diana's marriage expose a very dysfunctional royal family.
He became the most reviled man in the country, almost.
And tragedy leaves father and son's relationship hanging by a thread.
He was held responsible for Diana's death in many ways.
King Charles and Prince William, a special bond between father and son, cemented over decades.
King Charles III and Prince William are working together really well as a team.
I think it's actually an incredibly close relationship, and certainly one that's evolved over the decades.
Their relationship is shaped by joy and heartbreak in equal measure, and will not only define the future of the monarchy, but of Britain itself. By the 1980s, growing tensions between Charles and Diana were about to put unbearable strain on their family. The fairy tale wedding had turned into a nightmare.
For many years in the late 80s, there were rumours that the marriage was not happy, but it wasn't articulated, but it was articulated visibly. So there was famously a trip they did in Korea where the body language was really quite difficult.
The royal mantra of never complain, never explain forced a feeding frenzy of press speculation about the marriage.
Her story began to emerge of the mental health issues she'd had, of stories like she had thrown herself down the stairs at Sandringham and fallen at the foot of the Queen, and rumours that there was other people involved, as it were, in the marriage.
Both Charles and Diana were rumoured to be having affairs. Charles had known Camilla Parker Bowles since the 70s. Their instant rapport was a stark contrast to the stiff early years with Diana.
They're incredibly happy together. She makes him laugh. And the other thing that she does, which is really important, she makes him see the brighter side of life rather than the duller side of life.
Despite them both going on to marry other people, their friendship turned to infidelity. Charles and Diana's dysfunctional marriage was messily played out in the press for all to see, to the horror of their young sons.
But this must have been so difficult for Prince William and Prince Harry because they were finding out things about their parents that they didn't know.
In an ill-advised interview with Jonathan Dimbleby, the boys were subjected to the humiliation of seeing their still married father admit to adultery.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down.
It was extremely hard for the boys, very, very hard for William to take.
That must have been quite tough for him and for Harry to grow up knowing about this dissonance between their parents.
In a divorce, children end up taking sides. And he did take the side of his mother, Princess Diana, especially when you had his father on TV admitting pretty much that he'd been unfaithful for a good proportion of his marriage, and for Prince William to find that out in real time on national television must have been hugely difficult.
Despite Charles and Diana separating, their marriage dragged on for years. With Charles in disgrace, William became increasingly distanced from his father.
She would break down and be in tears, and he would comfort her and famously, push tissues under the bathroom door as she was crying.
And inevitably, I think, William's sympathies lay with his mother, and, he would have a crack at his dad and said, why do you make mummy so sad?
The strained relationship between father and son was bringing tension into the royal line of succession. But tragedy was about to stretch it to breaking point.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has died in a car crash in Paris.
Honestly, I don't think anyone could believe it as they woke up on that Sunday morning and turned on the news and heard that Diana was dead. How could this young, vibrant princess be no longer there?
It was a total shock. Total shock for the family, the country, the world.
I think really the country entered into a bit of mass hysteria. The grief of people outside Buckingham Palace demanding that a flag should be flown at half-mast, and it wasn't. And the Queen up at Balmoral with the boys, refusing to come down to London, not even making a national broadcast, headlines saying, "Where is our Queen?" It was a week when there was as close to a mutiny against the royal family as I've ever seen, and the palace officials knew that to be the case and were really, really worried about what was going to happen.
The death of Princess Diana cast a shadow over the nation. The whole world knew how close William was to his mother, and the hurt she felt at being pushed out of the royal family.
Charles became the most reviled man in the country almost. He was held responsible for Diana's death in many ways, for having plucked this innocent young girl into his life and into his marriage and then spurned her. It was a very, very harsh time for him.
At Diana's funeral procession, William and Harry were persuaded to dutifully walk behind their mother's coffin. Many couldn't believe the royal family would push them centre stage when they were grieving so badly.
They've never appeared more vulnerable or more tragic than when they were walking behind their mother's coffin.
To many observers, it looked like Charles was putting state before family, and the cost could be to lose William.
Did he still want to be royal? Did he want to be king? I think it would have been entirely normal for a teenager to have some doubts about what lay ahead. Do I really want all this?
We talk about Harry breaking away from royal duties, but I don't think people realise that we might have been closer to William breaking away at some point.
Obviously, losing their mother at such a young age in such unexpected and tragic circumstances is something that has shaped William and, described it as one of the most challenging times of his life.
When you have something so traumatic as the death of your mother when you're 15, as very sadly many people have experienced and no one wants to experience, it leaves you, it'll either make or break you, and I wouldn't let it break me.
I don't think people really give William the credit for having come through all that and being as stable as he is today and taking on everything he does today. I think sometimes we forget what he's really been through.
Charles must throw away the royal rulebook of distant parenting, otherwise his bond with his heir would be lost.
He didn't want that to be repeated with his own boys. It does illustrate that he was aware that he wanted to be a different kind of father to his sons than Philip had been to him.
Well, I certainly think that the death of Diana forced Charles to become a far better father. Well, I know perfectly well because the staff that were working at Highgrove at the time said suddenly overnight Charles became the father he'd always wanted to be.
He had to become empathetic. He had to get in touch with his emotional intelligence. He had to be more hands-on.
Coming up, Charles is determined to let his son heal, but also to prepare him to be a king. William must confront his biggest fear, the press.
He really, really didn't want to talk to us.
But William becomes a sensation. King Charles and Prince William are not only bound as father and son, but as king and heir. Shaped by both joy and tragedy, their relationship has the future of the monarchy at stake.
It's really, really serious who the British head of state is and who their heir is.
In the late 1990s, the death of Diana forced Charles to shake off the royal tradition of distant parenting.
After their mother died, he really did step up and he actually spent time with them. He was wonderful with William and Harry.
But Charles also had to show the world that his fractured family was healing. As king and heir, they had to face the press, despite William's hatred of public scrutiny.
Particularly William, I think, perhaps, was talking to a journalist such as myself, however affably, through clenched teeth, because he really, really didn't want to talk to us.
A skiing trip a year after Diana's death shows that father and sons are closer than ever.
This is where you saw Prince Charles step into the fatherly mode and kind of put his foot down a little bit and remind Prince William, I guess, that you are the heir to the throne. There's certain things that you are going to have to do, and service is one of them.
William is ready to be shown the ways of a head of state, and for that, the family must show its public face to the press.
You did see a shift, and we saw photo opportunities with Charles and his sons.
Are you getting enough privacy?
You not have gone, yes.
I think it was very important that the public saw in Charles a man who wasn't just Prince of Wales with a terribly busy diary, but a man who was also a father, and not just a father, but a really loving and doting father who absolutely adored his boys.
We could see it kind of playing out, that, you know, this idea that Charles was kind of throwing his arms around the boys. You've looked at them at the ski trips. You look at the kind of protection that he had for them, and, you know, there'd be little interviews little vignettes where you could see the banter between them.
Charles, we're getting married the best skier, is that true?
I don't know about that. We might have a family argument about that.
And it did show you that there was a genuine warmth.
Anyway, I'm very grateful to you all for leaving us alone for the next 2 days. That's very kind. It makes such a difference, I can't think.
You really helped them through a really tough time.
As Charles showed William the ropes in dealing with the press, the young prince was about to endure a new public trial. Screaming fans.
Much to his embarrassment, William became quite a heartthrob very early on. I remember in particular going to Canada just after Diana's death with William and Harry and Charles. We arrived and there were hordes of young girls, very young girls, all screaming for William. And William went quite red and he was very embarrassed by it, but they were screaming, "Marry me, Will, you know, I'm yours."
I think it's the only time I've ever seen a police officer rugby tackle a teenage girl who was trying to run across the street. You know, there were people genuinely in tears saying, you know, he's mine, he's mine.
You know, you remember those pictures of William magazines around the world going, oh my goodness, it's the Prince of Hotness and things like that. I think he's incredibly embarrassed and awkward about that. He's not somebody who really likes to be in the spotlight.
Charles steps up William's public role by allowing cameras into Eton College to follow William's life as a student. His father understands that the people need to get to know their future king.
So after a long time of being very suspicious of the press, William participated in a documentary about his life at Eton, which really for the first time showed him as an independent young man, doing his homework, cooking his dinner, and carrying out lots of kind of daily tasks, which for anybody else wouldn't be very interesting, but because this was, you know, at that time, second in line to the throne. I think it was under his father's guidance that, you know, you really need to show people how you're getting on.
I think Charles's advice to William about the press scrutiny was not to take any notice of it, just to let it be. I suppose never complain, never explain. Wars and remains pretty much his mantra. And he taught William that he had to put on his brave face when he was out and about, be charming, the grip and grin, that's what you do. You just get on with it. I mean, your job is to, I suppose, keep the monarchy relevant and also to do some good in the world if you can.
As William comes to the end of his time at Eton, we see a confident adult prince appear, and the relationship with his father is going from strength to strength.
Charles realised that William needed time to become the man he was going to become. In a way, it was very generous of Charles to do so because he hadn't ever really been given that opportunity himself. And perhaps that's why he realised that, you know, when William said he wanted to do something like go on a gap year, Charles was very supportive of those decisions and really helped him do that.
I remember when he was going on a gap year, and I was invited to do the first question, and William knew me then, and he was very polite about what he was going to do in the coming year.
I organised a water polo match and got sponsors.
Yeah, you saw that kind of The relationship and the warmth between the two of them.
Did your father chip in as well?
You might have helped slightly. Not very much, though. Chip in all the bloody time.
And they were sort of joking about the gap year and who was paying for it.
When you saw those images, it sort of broke down the preconception and possibly misconception of Charles being very stuffy, very rigid, a bit too stiff.
As William comes of age, he's given the freedom to do something his father was never allowed to do: make his own decisions.
When you look back at the young Prince Charles, who was told once he'd turned 16, there was still no choice. He was told, this is where you're going to university, this is the college you're going to, this is the service you're going to go into the Royal Navy, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do that. These things were just done to Prince Charles, whereas with Prince William, it was a much more consultative process.
William decides not to go straight into military training after school, but heads for university.
Charles was immensely proud, of William going off to university, and he chose to go quite far away to University of St Andrews in Scotland.
Prince William greeted like a local hero as he arrived with his father.
It was very sheltered up at St Andrews. There was a great draw to there being a sort of a bubble where he could just be completely protected. There was an agreement with the press that meant that William was left alone.
When Charles was a student at Cambridge University in 1967, life was very different for him. He was expected to dress and act like a royal and not a student.
I mean, he did go to university. That in itself was a break with tradition. But he went to uni, and you saw him around Cambridge in a suit and tie, looking very prim and proper. Whereas we have images of William up at St Andrews in Scotland, looking like any other student in jeans and a shirt.
He had a really wonderful few years up there, an opportunity to be a student.
Charles didn't have the freedom to find his own way as a young man, but he was determined to give his sons everything he never had. At St Andrews, far from the pressure and attention of the royal palaces, William was free to get his first taste of a normal life.
A real student, a student who cooked, who lived in his own house, who was able to forge friendships that have, lasted to today.
At St Andrews, William is finding the freedom and normality he craves. And with one of his housemates, Kate Middleton, he's also about to find something more.
It is rather wonderful that they were able to meet in circumstances in which other people meet, which is that they were students at university, and the relationship was able to develop with very few people realizing that it was more than a friendship, that they're able to live together, they're able to weekend together, get to know each other's families out of the spotlight.
Kate gave William his first ever glimpse of life in a stable, non-dysfunctional family. She grew up in the sleepy village of Bucklebury in Berkshire, where her parents made a comfortable living from running a mail-order business.
As much as Prince William fell in love with Kate Middleton, I think he fell in love with the Middletons as well and what they stood for. Family dinners with no protocols. You don't have to wait for the Queen to sit down before you sit down. You don't have to wait for the Queen to eat before you eat. He washed dishes, he laid the table.
When it was Kate's turn to meet the parents, her potential future in-laws couldn't have been more delighted to welcome a commoner into the family.
I think all the family were charmed by Catherine from the very start. She was very quickly embraced into the fold. And above all, the general feeling both of Prince Charles and of the Queen and everyone else was, look, what makes William happy, fine by us.
One of the people who was absolutely delighted when William brought Kate home for the first time was Charles. He, by all accounts, adored her from those very, very early months.
There's a very warm, even loving relationship between Charles and Catherine. He calls her my beloved daughter-in-law. I think he has a huge amount of respect for her.
They are very close, and I think he kind of thought of her as the daughter he never had, but also recognised what a stabling force she was for Prince William. I think she's also been quite instrumental in bringing William and Charles closer together as well.
Despite being a commoner, Catherine has the royal seal of approval. And inevitably, the whole nation is asking one question. Is there a royal wedding in the offing?
When William and his romance with Catherine had been discovered, he went on a skiing holiday with his father and his brother, and some cheeky reporter, which they all have to be very cheeky, asked him,
could there be another wedding perhaps on the card sometime soon?
So William was sort of thought, what are they talking about?
No.
Quite rightly. I mean, he'd only just really met this girl.
But the young couple stay together, and after 5 years, it looks like Charles's heir is on track to secure the dynasty with Catherine. Then he drops a bombshell. The family and the public are shocked when he splits up with Kate.
In 2007, Prince William decided that he wanted a break from his relationship with Catherine, so they had this break.
Filled with doubts, William turns to the only person he knows who's learned painful lessons from being a prince in love.
Prince Charles gave Prince William some advice. Something along the lines of, if you can't do right by her, then let her go. And I think what we saw there was Prince Charles admitting and realising the mistakes that he had made with Prince William's mother, with Diana, Princess of Wales.
Charles said that from personal experience because he'd seen what his girlfriends had gone through, and as soon as he was linked with anyone in the press, you know, their lives were turned upside down, their parents were doorstepped. It put them in the spotlight in a way that most of these women had never experienced. And that had, to a degree, happened to Kate Middleton.
Kate's answer to life without William showed that she was made of sterner stuff. She put her best foot forward.
Catherine, she got on with her life. She was out in the town. She was pursuing her career. She signed up to do like a dragon boat race, you know, as you do.
This was a girl who was very different to Diana, so I don't think there was any chance of the past repeating itself. I mean, this was a girl who, when someone told her that she was so lucky to be dating Prince William, she turned around and said, he's lucky to be dating me, which I think says so much about Kate.
After a few months, William heeds Charles's advice to choose the right girl. He chooses Kate.
I think he realised as soon as he'd instigated it that he'd made a terrible mistake, particularly when, you know, Kate was out at his favourite nightclub looking $1 million. I think actually William knew that Kate was the one. Inevitably, it was quite a short separation.
3 years later, they're engaged. Charles had advised William to learn from his own mistakes with Diana and to only settle for what was best for him. Everyone is surprised when William, who usually stays silent about his private life, agrees to do an interview with ITV's Tom Bradby.
People are bound to ask, you leave university, you've been going out a bit and you split up.
There aren't many journalists who would dare ask about the fact that they're broken up at one point, but William and Tom Bradby got along very well.
Post-breakup, will they convince the public that this royal wedding will not be a repeat of his father's marriage of convenience, but one of love?
It was very much trying to find our own way, and we were growing up, and so it was just sort of, you know, a bit of space and a bit of things like that, and it soon worked out for the better.
And I think I at the time, wasn't very happy about it, but actually I really valued that time for me as well, although I didn't think it at the time. Looking back on it,
There's a chance to re-center yourself.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. This is not bad.
I think it's a cautionary tale that William has learnt from. He's seen his father get married to somebody who wasn't a good match with and probably hurried into having children before he was ready to. And William has thought, that's not for me. You know, I'm going to learn the lessons from the past, not reproduce those lessons. And Charles has been happy to support him in that journey.
After 10 years together, William and Catherine finally marry in front of an estimated 1 billion viewers worldwide. An occasion made all the more special by Charles's personal input.
The wedding was an opportunity for William, Kate and Charles to really sort of come together as a trio. Of course, Charles was largely bankrolling it, and he was involved. Him and Kate sat down and spent hours going through music. Charles, not only did he give them sort of carte blanche to create the wedding that they wanted, which involved a huge party at Buckingham Palace. When William drove off after the wedding, it was in Charles's Aston Martin.
Just 2 years after their wedding comes the news the whole country has been waiting for. William and Kate are having a baby. At 24 minutes past 4 on the 22nd of July 2013, Prince George is born at St Mary's Hospital, London. The same hospital where William was born. How the times and roles of fathers have changed in just one generation. A change made clear as the world watched William face the very modern challenge of the baby seat.
William with the car seat. He'd been practicing how to put it in the back. It's a tricky old job, believe me, I know as a granny. And he very deftly put young George in the back in his car seat. And Catherine got in the back, and he drove his family home. The very image of a modern young father. When Charles and Diana left the hospital, Charles did hold the baby, William, briefly, looking really rather nervous, but then quite quickly gave William back to Diana. And gosh, those were the days. She got in the back of the car. No car seats then. I don't think there were even seat belts.
This was a new high for Queen Elizabeth. With the birth of her great-grandson, Prince George, the throne is now secured by 3 generations of future Windsor monarchs.
One of the most important roles of a monarch is to ensure that the dynasty is safeguarded. And Queen Elizabeth absolutely did that because, of course, she had her heir in Prince Charles, then Prince of Wales, Prince William after, and, of course, Prince George after that.
When George is followed by the births of Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, William finally builds the solid family he craves. Coming up, a scandal is about to bring the monarchy to its knees.
William made it absolutely clear that the Queen needed to act quickly to minimise any reputational damage to the monarchy.
William shows the Windsor steel. As father and son, tragedy has tested the bond between Charles and William to breaking point. But Charles rebuilt the relationship between future king and heir and stabilised the monarchy.
He's clearly passing down knowledge, information, great advice to Prince William. So I think now they are closer than they've ever been.
The royal family must always be politically impartial, but one way they can make a difference is through the charities they support, like mental health and the environment.
William has taken on his own projects. He already had the Earthshot project well underway. This is his environmental scheme where every year he awards innovative entrepreneurs with an award and some grants to help them sort of scale up their projects, which are hopefully going to save the planet.
My father obviously been speaking about climate change for many, many years. And so I sort of feel there's a bit of a family history to sort of inherit in terms of the environment. But I think each generation passes on something crucial to the next one to follow on.
He's absolutely devoted and committed to those issues, and they are big issues, and they're real issues.
But Charles and William's devotion to duty was about to be tested to the limits. Just as royal popularity was back on a high, it was the turn of Elizabeth's supposed favourite child, Prince Andrew, to drag it back through the mud.
And the Queen sort of had always had this sort of sense that life can be very difficult for number 2. That's why she always had a great deal of sympathy for Prince Andrew.
Charles's wayward brother often courted controversy, both in his duties and his private life. Overindulging in royal privilege, the press gave him nicknames such as Air Miles Andy, Randy Andy. By 2019, his misdemeanours became too big for his family to ignore.
So much has come out about Prince Andrew. You know, he's had to step down from royal duties over his friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Prince Andrew tries to rescue his reputation by doing an interview with the BBC's Emily Maitlis, in which he downplays his relationships with Epstein and victim Virginia Giuffre, but it does not go to plan.
And she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Didn't happen.
Do you remember her?
No.
After the car crash interview, we didn't get a comment out of Buckingham Palace. There wasn't any clear decision-making in terms of whether Andrew was going to continue representing the royal family at that point. Nothing had changed.
In many ways, the king is somebody who doesn't enjoy confrontation. It's the way that he's always been.
Whereas William could be quite bullish and quite opinionated.
After Andrew fails to avoid a subsequent lawsuit, William becomes heavily involved in the Queen and Charles's decision-making.
William, who absolutely saw the potential for disastrous reputational impact for the royal family, stepped in very swiftly because the Prince of Wales was away at the time and had a conversation with the Queen and made it absolutely clear that the Queen needed to act quickly to minimise any reputational damage to the monarchy. The Duke of York was stripped of his titles, of his patronages.
He will never take part in royal engagements again.
I think that was just such a telling moment on William's part, his ability to read the landscape and to know what to do in a situation like that.
5, 4, 3, 2. But how would William deal with his own troublesome brother when the royal family comes under fire from within?
Prince Harry often said that he would love to have a relationship like William and Catherine did. You know, he wanted to find someone, he wanted to settle down and have a family.
In 2016, Harry found that someone. Meghan Markle, a divorced American actress, didn't tick the usual boxes for a royal spouse. But at first, Harry and Meghan joined forces with William and Kate.
We're stuck together for the rest of our lives, so...
The Fab Four effect makes the whole royal family look good.
Fast forward, everything changes. The wheels come off. Harry and Meghan decide that they don't want a part of royal life anymore.
Harry and Meghan give up their royal status and move to Montecito. To fund their new life in America, they strike various deals with media powerhouses like Spotify and Netflix for a reported combined fee of £90 million to tell their story. Charles and William are right to be wary of what's being revealed.
And that was the beginning of such a huge rift, which to this day is not healed between William and Harry.
But the straw that breaks the camel's back for William is when Harry and Meghan give an interview to Oprah Winfrey and allege there are racist elements within the royal family.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
What made it so much worse was the personal betrayal, was the Oprah interview in which Meghan alleged that a member of the royal family had been racist by making comments about the colour of their then unborn son's skin, which erupted into a huge racist row that sort of divided people in Britain, divided people across the Atlantic.
William was touring a school the next day and was asked if they were racist.
Is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
Very unusual for a member of the royal family to respond to a shouted question from a journalist. I was very impressed at how William dealt with that rather unpleasant allegation that was left to hang in the air.
With obvious anger behind the royal silence, Charles and William take the same side against Harry. But in 2022, the country suffers its most devastating loss in 70 years, the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Elizabeth had been seen as a foundation stone of Britishness around the world, and now she was gone.
The announcement of the Queen's death came, well, as a shock and surprise, not only to the nation, but really to the family. So I think for Charles and for William, it was a really wake-up call to reality.
The country not only had to get used to the idea of Charles being the new head of state, but of William being his second in command as Prince of Wales.
There was a feeling of what's going to happen. Is Charles up to the job?
I think there was a real sense of trepidation among the public as to what King Charles would be. Would it be a smooth transition from the late Queen, who was obviously well-loved, well-known around the world, and how would he be able to step into those shoes of his late mother?
At Charles III's coronation, the country held its breath to see how well the crown fit the first new head since 1952.
It's always been through the history of coronations, when they go wrong, it's usually the fault of the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is why you see the look of almost terror on the face of Justin Welby as he's putting the crown on the king, the great crowning moment. He's got to make sure he gets it on the right way round, and that's why he's sort of putting it on, and it's not the smoothest crowning moment. And then he does this sort of, quick check, and he wants to check he's got it right. He did get it right.
King Charles immediately made William Prince of Wales, and the bond with his son was clear for all to see during his coronation.
William doesn't like ceremonial, but I think, William's rather good at ceremonial. There's an incredibly powerful moment at the coronation where William kneels before his father, who's just been crowned, and says that, I'm your liege man, and as it were, pays obeisance to him.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
William says, I am your number one subject, I am your heir. And then he kisses him on the cheek. And Charles looks slightly watery-eyed and deeply moved by this. That's a really powerful moment.
Moments like that, they mean a huge amount to the king, because that's, for him, that's really the ultimate endorsement.
In the tribute concert to King Charles, William left no doubt about the admiration for his father.
William's speech at the concert, which was essentially a tribute to his father, was really moving.
Because for over 50 years, in every corner of the UK, across the Commonwealth and around the world, he has dedicated himself to serve others. Pa, we are all so proud of you.
Queen Elizabeth's motto of duty first presented a formal image to the world that was both unreadable and unapproachable. The public expected King Charles's reign to be more of the same, but after the pomp and ceremony of his coronation, he stepped out of Elizabeth's shadow to reveal a new side to the royal family.
You imagine Charles as being, very formal, but suddenly he was this huggy man. I mean, the Queen never hugged anyone in public, ever.
And I think the touchy-feely Charles went up a notch, and there was a very, very powerful moment at Buckingham Palace when there was a reception for the New Zealand ladies rugby team, normally quite a formal occasion, when one of the women said, how about a hug? And he said, why not?
Yeah, we all wanted a hug, but only if it was okay with you. Yeah. Why
not? But he looked absolutely delighted. I must say I've never tried that with the king when I've met him. Maybe next time.
He sees that this is what people want. They don't want the sort of austere, standing back monarchy. They want to be touched. They want to have connection with their monarch. And I think he read the whole situation really well, and that's why he's doing it.
This idea that perhaps we were in for a rocky road with that transition from one monarch to the next actually never materialised.
Coming up, William is about to face his toughest test yet.
To deal with that in public, just as he'd had to deal with the catastrophic death of his mother as a teenager, that's tough, whoever you are.
He needs to draw from everything his father taught him. King Charles and Prince William must foster the most important father and son bond in the country. So far, they've overcome seemingly impossible odds to become closer than ever.
Charles threw his weight of support around both William and Catherine when he gave his first address to the nation and said right from the start that they would be the Prince and Princess of Wales.
I think William is determined to see the monarchy continue. He doesn't want it to phase out with him.
Their bond as king and heir is sealed, but just 4 months into Charles's reign, they come under attack from within. In his brother Harry's biography, Spare, Harry commits the cardinal sin of spilling royal secrets. But worse, he singles out William and Catherine for some damaging allegations.
We have a much better insight now into what it's like to be a Spare, thanks to Harry's book.
Prince William saw this as a massive betrayal because here you had Prince Harry, lifting that gilded curtain. He was going completely against the royal family mantra of never complain and never explain.
People close to the Prince of Wales have told me the worst thing of all, of course, is any criticism that was levelled against his wife, Catherine. I don't think for William there's any coming back from that. He really feels like his brother's crossed a line there.
Harry acknowledges how his broken relationship with William was causing his father distress.
Willie in particular didn't want to hear anything. After he'd shut me down several times, he and I began sniping, saying some of the same things we'd said for months, years. It got so heated that Pa raised his hands. Enough! He stood between us, looking up at our flushed faces. Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery. His voice sounded raspy, fragile. It sounded, if I'm being honest, old.
He quoted his father, Charles, saying, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery."
Can there be a reconciliation between the two brothers? I think that's some way off.
At 73 years old, Charles became the oldest British monarch ever to be crowned. But tragically, William may become king sooner than expected. Less than 2 years into Charles's reign, the nation was shocked to hear of his cancer diagnosis.
King Charles is beginning a specialist treatment for cancer. Charles personally told members of his family, including both his sons.
Shortly afterwards, the Princess of Wales made her own announcement about a devastating discovery during hospital treatment.
In January, I underwent major abdominal surgery in London, and at the time, it was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present.
William described 2024 as probably the hardest of his life, with the added burden of being heir to the throne.
For the rest of his life, Prince William, King William, is going to look back on 2024 as a really grim year. The fact that he's had to deal with, first of all, the cancer diagnosis of his wife, but at the same time, a cancer diagnosis of his father. I mean, I think that put him in a uniquely difficult and challenging position.
Our future king could well be about to face the biggest challenge of his life.
His father's illness is going to affect him, not just because it's his father, but because it might mean a complete change of his life, because he's the heir to the throne, and should his father die, he would have enormous responsibilities of being king. And the idea that he would take on those responsibilities at a time when his wife was also dangerously ill, I mean, what a crisis and what a catastrophe. And to deal with that in public, just as he'd had to deal with the catastrophic death of his mother as a teenager, that's tough, whoever you are.
William has already endured more painful blows than many people take in a lifetime. But with support and guidance from Charles every step of the way, he's shown that he has a king-like strength to prevail and even thrive.
He has that kind of rod of iron that the late Queen had. He's extremely strong. He's not going to be pushed into doing anything he doesn't want to do. He's quite a demanding person to work for, I understand from speaking to people who work for him. But that he does inspire loyalty.
In June 2025, William took another step towards being a great leader. At the World Ocean Day conference in Monaco, he stepped into the spotlight with heads of state from around the world. Every inch the confident campaigner for his father's beliefs and his country.
He's so much more confident now on the stage, and we see it time and time again. So I was in Monaco with him recently where he gave a speech at an international conference about the importance of saving the ocean.
Halfway through this decisive decade, I call on all of you to think big in your actions. Let us act together with urgency and optimism while we still have the chance. For the future of our planet, for the future generations, we must listen to the words of Sir David Attenborough. If we save the sea, we save our world.
He was sharing the stage with President Macron and other world leaders, and he feels very confident and at home in that situation now. In years gone by, perhaps less so. We have seen a huge transition over recent years of William really stepping into that statesman-like role. He's always been one for getting up and doing his duty, but I think now he seems to almost enjoy it in a way he didn't before.
Coming up, Prince William has proved he can take to the world stage like a king. But later in the year, he has a serious job to do for his country, wooing the President of the United States.
It's a very important relationship that they're dealing with here, the UK and the USA. They must not put a foot wrong.
When the time comes for William to take centre stage, is he ready? King Charles and Prince William share a bond beyond that of father and son. After tragedy threatened a disastrous collapse of their relationship, the country now depends on king and heir sharing a brighter future.
It's a really pivotal moment for the monarchy, an important moment, just for the present and for the future, and they seem closer than ever.
As Prince of Wales, William is officially King Charles III's right-hand man. He now faces the test of proving that the royal family can make a difference. A state visit is the perfect chance to show that soft power can change the fortunes of the country.
So we hear a lot of talk about soft power, but what does it actually mean? This is a way in which the royal family helps to promote British interests through friendships. It softens any political discussion that comes after. It's why the state banquet happens at the beginning of the state visit, not at the end.
In July 2025, President Emmanuel Macron paid the first French state visit to the UK since Brexit. William and Kate joined Charles and Camilla front and centre.
What we saw was the Prince and Princess of Wales meeting the Macrons at the airport. That doesn't always happen.
William and Charles paved the way for the tough political negotiations that followed.
One does wonder if Macron had just arrived for meetings with the Prime Minister, whether those meetings with Keir Starmer would have gone so well.
A few months later, Charles and William must bring our most important ally of all on side, in the state visit of Donald Trump.
He's described it as a Trump fest, and the palace, I know, are working really, really hard behind the scenes to make it completely unique and very, very special.
It's a very important relationship that they're dealing with here, the UK and the USA. They must not put a foot wrong.
Since Trump met William in Paris at the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral,
Whoa, what a nice group. He's a good man, this one.
The president made it clear that he has as much high regard for him as the king.
William, he said he's doing a fantastic job, that he's a handsome man, and this is a relationship that Donald Trump holds, it's clearly dearer than those that he has with world leaders around the world, other politicians.
9 months later, Trump's speech at his second state banquet reserves special praise for father and son.
His Majesty has also raised a remarkable son in His Royal Highness, Prince of Wales. Really amazing. We've gotten to know you, and I think you're going to have an unbelievable success in future.
You know, great. That's soft power. I mean, you know, you're being praised by the President of the United States. What's not to like?
With William representing Britain, things are looking good for future dealings with the US.
Prince William has to play up to that role. Donald Trump likes him. He may or may not like Donald Trump. We will never know. But it is really up to Prince William to make sure that Donald Trump leaves the United Kingdom feeling massaged and happy and that he's had a wonderful time.
It's a great sign of the King's generosity, of his respect for his son, and for his faith in his son. I mean, he wouldn't have William doing those things, having those all-important meetings with Trump, with Macron, with whatever world leaders it is that he's meeting, if Charles didn't think that William was absolutely capable. And William has proven to be a very capable international statesman.
Charles had 70 years to watch and learn how to be a monarch from his mother. But William is a comparatively young man. The question on everyone's lips is he ready?
I think sometimes there is this tendency to look at William and see him as some sort of apprentice. You know, he's still got the L plates on.
You know, I asked an aide if William's time to become king is sooner than expected. Is he ready? And the aide was immediate in their response, and this person has known William for many decades, and said he's absolutely ready.
King Charles has started down a path of honouring tradition whilst modernising the monarchy. William is ready to take his father's legacy forwards into a great future. How will the monarchy look under King William?
They'll keep the pomp and circumstances, but it won't be surrounding William.
King William will want a slimmed down monarchy, a more empathetic, in touch with people monarchy.
And he's always eager to put people at ease by sort of getting at their level. I don't think he thinks that he's better than other people. He's just wanting to relate to people and make the visit that he's doing have real impact.
He does come across as a very genuine person. We know what he stands for, we know what he's interested in. He's thoughtful, but he also has a kind of sense of fun about him.
Who's pinching my bottom? He says, who's pinching my bottom? So I can't imagine the late Queen saying that.
As father and son, Charles and William have been under intense pressure to take on the biggest job in Britain. But Charles rose above his own troubled past and created a solid foundation for his heir to build on.
It's the old expression, isn't it? You've got to give your children roots and wings. Now, Charles really did give William wings. He let him go off and do what he wanted to do and become the man that he was going to become. Now, that's very generous of Charles and very kind of him. And doing so, he created a kind man in Prince William.
He's a man who's in touch. He's a man who's got his finger on the pulse. He's a man who can, speak to a commoner, speak to an aristocrat, speak to a president, and make everyone feel heard and seen. And that's a great gift.
A 1,200-year-old institution, he's the heir to that institution. That's a lot to carry on his shoulders, but in the end he's going to plough his own furrow, and it's fantastic. He's got Catherine beside him, and he's got his father and then the memory of his mother and his grandmother to follow their example, to be a man, to be a great king.